So, first of all, Jim, tell me a little bit about your mom and dad.
My mother and father, well, my father died when I was 9 years old. And I lived in Mercer, Pennsylvania, Western PA. And I always thought that Western PA was the hotbed for sports. And my dad died at 9, and my mother was left with two of us. I had a brother that was 12 and myself. And my mother had suffered a heart attack. And so there we were, living, there with my mother. And we got some help from the farm people that would come in and help the women who lived on farms outside of Mercer. And then my mother, she passed away probably when she was about 75, 76. I was living in Jamestown at the time. So anyway, that's where we were. And then from that point, I played high school sports in Mercer, if that's what you want to hear.
Well, we do now, but I want to ask one specific question. You were born in 1935.
Exactly. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Do you have any recollection of, now you would have been 6 years old, of Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941?
I do remember the headlines of the Pittsburgh Sun-Telegraph. The headlines were, Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. And I was 6, December 7th, 41. And I was in my home in Mercer. And President Roosevelt gave a speech to the Congress. And we went from there to war. I had two older brothers. One was both of them were in the Pacific Theater. And one was in Burma, one was in Okinawa. And when my father died in 45, the one brother who was in the Navy, Lieutenant JG in the Navy, was allowed to come home. My other brother, who was 18 and was in Burma, was not allowed to come home. So I remember that much.
What was it like at home? I mean, during this time period, rations, and did that impact your mom and you?
It did. I can remember we got Social Security checks. Each child, there were two of us at home, got $12.75 a month. And my mother got 18 because she got 18. My father had a good job, but spent the money educating my oldest brother at Allegheny College.
Good college.
Very good. That's where you went. I know that. He was a Phi Psi. I don't know what you were.
I was confused.
That's all right. We'll go on from there. And that's how much money we had. And my mother, having just suffered a heart attack, could not go to work. So that's what we lived on. And ration, everything, well, not everything, but I can remember sugar being rationed. Gasoline, of course, was rationed. And I can remember most of the things that were rationed. And you got ration stamps. And they had, I think it was divided by A, B, and C ration stamps. I can remember having blackouts in the community. A siren would blow, and everybody had to turn the lights off. And they had what they called a warden then, would walk the streets. And to make sure that all the lights were out in case someone was going to bomb little old Mercer, And you left the lights off, and there we were in the dark. No candles, no nothing. And there we were for at least a half an hour, Greg. And you had to do it that way, and that was a practice in case it would come to reality.
The war ends both in VE days in June of 1945 and then VJ Day in August of 1945. Do you recall if in Mercer there was celebration, bells ringing? Was there anything along those lines?
No, just the fire whistles. They had Little Mercer I'm trying to equate the size of Mercer to probably the size of Lakewood here in Western New York. They had, as small as it was, they had 2 fire departments. Yeah, yeah. And the fire whistles blew, etc., and so forth. But that was about it. And of course, the war ended a month after the death of my father, and we were still recovering as a family. But nevertheless, everybody was excited, about the war ending, and my brothers would come home.
Sure. Do you remember any sort of reunion moment where your brothers pop in the door and it's just sort of emotional?
I don't remember anything like that.
You're a pretty young guy.
Yeah, I was.
So you played sports in Mercer High School. Were you a natural athlete?
Well, I think so. Mercer, as small as it was, there were 3 classifications of sports in Pennsylvania: A, B, C.
Mm-hmm.
Mercer was a B school, right in the middle. And I did play basketball and football, and they had baseball one year, and I played that. But football and basketball, when I was a sophomore, 15 years old, I got to play with 4 seniors, and we were 25-0 going in. We went to the Final Four, lost to 2 players from Avalon, and those 2 players went on to Duke University and played at Duke. That's how good they were, and they were a B school. And and then my junior year, I played basketball at Mercer High School. We did not get in the playoffs. Averaged a lot of points. I averaged 27.5 points a game in that year. Senior year, and I made second team All-State in that year, which was that was an honor to make that, And in my senior year, we went to the Final Four again. And I only averaged 24.5 points a game my senior year. That was it. And then went on to, I went to Westminster for 1 semester in Western PA. See, I saw, I wasn't getting much of a chance to play. Transferred at semesters to Grove City. And I started playing right away, So I played the rest of my college career at Grove City and enjoyed it very much. So, but at Grove City, you might recognize a few names that I played with. Dutch Leonard was one. Dutch, when it was he and I played in the same team for 2 years together. He was 2 years behind me, and we were fraternity brothers. And another name you might remember, and maybe not, you're a baseball man, Gary Peters. Gary Peters pitched for the White Sox. And he was probably the best athlete that I had ever seen at that time. He could do anything. Anything. And Gary, and I got to see him play baseball later on in Cleveland when he was with the White Sox. And Al Lopez was his manager. So, those were good times.
Was it unnatural for you to go from your Grove City? Did you know where your profession might lie, where the next step would be?
That's a very good question, Greg. I had majored in business administration at Grove City College. After my senior year of basketball, the 4 of us, Gary and Dutch and Jim Pasillo from Meadville, PA, and another player, started the barnstorming tour of basketball games. We went to Wellsville, Ohio. Jim Riggs was from East Liverpool. We went to Liverpool. We played in Liverpool. We played in Wellsville. We played in Brookville, Brookville, Pennsylvania. Yeah, we played a total, after the season was over, a total of 22 games. That group of guys. And that influenced me in wanting to become a coach. I kind of, since I was a senior at that time, I kind of took charge of the team. And Franklin, Pennsylvania was another one that we went to. We won it 22-1 or 21-2. We only lost one game. We lost in East Liverpool to the University of Pittsburgh. That's it. That was it. That's who we lost to. Beaver Francis, maybe that name rings a bell.
Big name.
Yeah, big name. Beat him in Wellsville. He was from that area, and Jim Riggs, I think, knew him, and so there we were. And it was that convinced me I wanted to coach. Leading those players that I had played with, and doing that. And so at that time, here I am ready to graduate in that May, and I was in business administration. Now I had to make a choice. I had to go back to college to take some education courses and do some student teaching. Well, that's another story.
Let's hear it.
All right, we'll hear it. Huh. In Mercer, there was a company called Tennessee Gas. And Tennessee Gas was a big corporation, and I, along with two friends, got a job with Tennessee Gas up in Clymer, New I'd never heard of Clymer, New York. Never heard of it. They were building houses up in Clymer, New York for the potential gas people to live in that area. I think it was called Ravelin Hill. Does that name ring a bell?
Well, I just drove past that. I was thinking about, I'm just going to drop Ravelin Hill. Up and down.
Yeah.
To get towards Peak and Peak. There it is, Tennessee Gas.
Okay, well, the story continues. I'm sorry, but it does. And I'm playing softball 3 nights a week with these other two fellows from Mercer and me. And I happened to mention to a spectator who was there that I was interested in coaching and teaching. That spectator told his father because he liked me, and his father was the assistant superintendent of BOCES. Well, the assistant superintendent told the principal at Panama that he knew of a guy. He didn't know me, but he knew of a person, me, who was interested in teaching and coaching. And it so happens that summer, Panama was looking for a phys ed teacher and coach, part-time. All right. I'm working one day and I'm up on a roof and on one of these houses in Clymer or Ravelin Hill, and this man down at the bottom wants to talk to me. Happens to be Robert Howe, Howe, and he was the superintendent principal of Panama. He wanted to know if I wanted a job, just like that. Okay, and I had just recently gotten married to Mary Ann, and so now I have to make a decision. Do I take this job part-time or to somewhere in New York? I don't know where it is. I do know it's close to the border. Or do I go back to college and do my work? I finally made a decision that I would take the job at Panama. So my first year at Panama, I meet up with a fellow by the name of Paul Owens. Now, you're a baseball man.
Oh, absolutely, Paul.
You know Paul Owens.
Sure.
Paul Owens and I became very close. Paul took a job at Panama for 1 semester. Yeah, and teaching phys ed at Panama. And he coached football. He didn't know much about basketball. He knew how to play basketball, and I told him I was his assistant. And that's how I knew Paul Owens, and my wife, Mary Ann, would invite Paul to dinner at least twice a week. And Paul still had a home in Olean. And but he rented a room, and in Panama, and came to work every day. Paul did, and we had a lot of long talks together. Talks involving all the racial problems that could occur with baseball. And my being a big Dodger fan, Jackie Robinson and what impetus he might have had with baseball at the time. And we all knew how big of a person that Jackie was, and how much influence he had on baseball. So, and that's a story, a little bit of a story about some baseball people, and that I know, and yet I'm a basketball man, and I can go on about Panama.
Well, please do. That's what we're here to learn.
Okay, I can go on about Panama. I took over as head coach at Panama as semesters when Paul went to resume his baseball career. So I finished that year at Panama, and we lost to Sherman in the semifinals of the section. Okay, now Sherman had players that I couldn't believe: 6'8", 6'6", 6'4". This is little Sherman. They had beaten that year. They had Ed Westerling was the coach. They had beaten Strong Vincent at home. And they beat Panama by 6 points in the semifinals. Now the next year, I got appointed as head coach at Panama. That would be the year of 58, 59. I got to be appointed head coach, and Panama for the first time won a championship. And excuse me, it meant a lot to the village of Panama. Here we live in the larger areas of Western New York, but the people in Panama, they're basketball enthusiasts, and it takes me back to the movie Hoosiers. Well, when you watch a little school like Panama go to Buffalo, the kids, I don't even know if some of the kids ever got to Buffalo, play on Memorial Auditorium, and we played against Hinsdale. We won 45-31. Hinsdale was coached by the nicest guy, Carl Saglenben from Dunkirk. And Carl was a coach at Hinsdale. He later became a superintendent and principal at Hinsdale. Nice guy. But Panama won that game, 45-31. Okay, and then the next year at Panama, we got pushed to Class B. At that time, New York State only had 3 classifications, A, B, C. That's that time. We got pushed to Class B by one boy. One boy pushed us into B, which then we have to go against Maple Grove and Silver Creek. And Silver Creek has a player named George Carter, who went to Bonus, very good player. Was not the best player I coached against, but he was very good. But that year, the same person that hired me from Ravelin Hill, his 2 sons left Jamestown and came back to Panama to play. And keep in mind, we're over the limit by one boy. We're into B. Now, if his 2 sons would have stayed here, we'd have been C. But they were good kids and good players. They were very good. Very good. So we lost to George Carter. We beat Maple Grove in the quarterfinals of the section. Silver Creek beat us. George Carter and Silver Creek beat us. Then the next year, I had a very good team again, and we won the sectional championship again. And that was headed by Randy O'Tander, who had the House of Television here in Jamestown. That team was good. Ironically enough, I knew they were good athletes. And Forestville beat us twice that year by 1 point. Al Muck beat us twice by 1 point. Now Al Muck he's with you in the Hall of Fame. Oh, I know. Oh, I know. I told you he's the greatest. He's the best high school player I ever coached against. Al Muck. Yep, and I coached against some good ones, but he could shoot, and he did sign a contract with KC, Kansas City. Yep. But anyway, my team in that year, it was 61, I knew was good. So I scheduled them to go back to my hometown to play Christmas tournament. And everybody thought I was going to be matched up against Mercer High School. And the ironic thing about that game would have been the Mercer job opened and I applied for that. And this guy was from Wampum, Pennsylvania, Butler Hennon's protege. He applied. He got it. I didn't. Heartbroken. However, took my team down to Mercer, and the people there expected little Panama to play Mercer in the tourney. Didn't happen. Mercer lost the first game. We won the first game. Now we got matched up against Conneaut Valley. It's the championship game, and we lost. But we didn't get to play against Mercer. And then the next year would be what, 62? Yeah, 62. We had a good team, a very good team. We went to the Buffalo again. We lost. The only time I lost in Buffalo. We lost to Forestville. They were good. 63, another great team. Went to Buffalo again. And we won that one big time. Beat Chautauqua. And then 64 was the only losing season I had, Greg. We lost in 64. I had started 3 sophomores, and I was ready to go for the next year. 65 was my last year. We won the championship again. You know, so total, if I coached for 7.5 years as a head coach. Won 4 championships. Lost 1 in the championship, so I'm in Buffalo 5 times. And, had a record of 115-31. I know it sounds as if I'm bragging. I don't want it to sound that way. I'm being interviewed, and I'm in front of 3 of the finest people that I can know, and I have known, and I'm just telling it the way it was.
All before you turned 30.
Yes, sir. All before.
And it's notable to note that before your arrival, Panama had never won a championship game, and that's
right.
You created a difference. You know, I remember those days because we lived in Jamestown, but we had a place in Panama.
That right.
We built it in the 60s.
Sure.
And I remember hearing about the McElrath teams. So
yep.
Your reputation far exceeded wide and far.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Don Wood, one of your former players, said Coach McElrath had taught us not only to be winners playing his beloved game of basketball, but lessons that would be with us our whole life. Did you teach in Panama other than athletics? I mean,
yes. Yeah, I taught English. I taught English in Panama. And I went on to, in the summers, I would go to Syracuse University, which was at Chautauqua at the time, and work on my English credits there so that I could be certified to teach English at Panama. So, and Chautauqua had Syracuse at the time. And Don Wood, he graduated in 63. And he played for me. Yes, he did. With Ron Morris and John Rowe. Oh, yeah, very, very good team. Excellent team.
Is Bruce Colton part of your world?
Bruce is part of my world. Bruce was a sophomore on my last championship team I had. And Bruce played JV that year, but I knew Bruce was very bright, and he became an attorney. And I knew Bruce had transferred from Jamestown to Panama. And Bruce was good, but I didn't have a place for him on the varsity. I moved him up once we got to the playoffs. And that's another thing. He got in the game in Buffalo. Every player I coached at Panama got to play in Buffalo at one point or another. Yep. And Bruce did. Now, Bruce, the following year, after I resigned from coaching, it would have been '66. And I left them, those three sophomores, they would have been seniors coming up, yeah, maybe seniors. They were 19-1 also. And they won a championship, the team that I left them. And Bruce started that next year. Mm-hmm.
You know, at that time, there was no state championships and
Right.
stuff like that. Was that frustrating for you that you kind of won the regionals and that's as far as it went?
Yes, sir, it was. And I remember expressing it at the time to Jim Riggs, and he knew it. But because in Pennsylvania, they, as I said to you earlier, you can go to the Final Four, which we did, and they have a state championship on all three classifications. Now, yes, it was very frustrating to me, but it didn't seem to bother the other coaches that I coached against. They never made any remarks about it. It bothered me that because I truly felt that I had the athletes that would win a state championship. I really did. They were good, and they were very good. Unselfish, and that's what I tried to teach my players. Unselfish, how to play the game, and to buy into what I was trying to teach them. And they did. They did. And it was good.
Was there an aha moment when you decided that you had kind of accomplished what you wanted to accomplish? This was just age 29 as a coach to do something different, to get into administration.
Yes, sir, there was. I had made up my mind that I either, because of some of the administrators that I worked with and worked for, that I either wanted to become a college coach in basketball or become a high school principal. That's what I wanted to do. So at that age, then I said that I'm going to do it. So what I did was I left Panama and took a job at Washington Junior High School teaching English. 3 years I was there. But I wanted to get into Jamestown. To my way of thinking at the time, Greg, Jamestown was the epitome of greatness if you want to become a principal or basketball coach. But I wanted, if I was going to be a basketball coach, I wanted to go on the college level, which no college ever came coming. No, the high schools did. I could have gone to Pennsylvania to coach high school. I could have gone to Barker, New York to coach, but I didn't. And so to become an administrator, then I wanted to teach the diversification of students in Jamestown because they didn't have that at Panama necessarily or in Mercer. So I did. I taught at Washington 3 years, and then, funny story, I got a note from my sister that I was in Cape Cod with my family that summer, and she had answered the telephone at my house. And the telephone was from David Abram from Casadega Valley. And David wondered if I was interested in becoming an assistant principal at Casadega Valley. Now, and I had just received tenure in Jamestown. I got home, read the note, called David Abram, went out for an interview, and took the job as an assistant. 1 year. 1 year. Then there were 2 openings in Jamestown at the time. One at Lincoln Junior High for Sheridan Hardenberg, and one at Jefferson for Marion Rizzo. They called me, Jamestown administrators called me, I think a couple of board members, called me for an interview. They put me in the middle of a circle. They encircled me. I can remember this. And I was in a chair like this, and asked me hard questions from all sides, and I had to answer the questions. And I don't know how. Maybe they were testing me, see if I wouldn't rattle or anything. But I must have done something right because they asked me, would it matter where I went, Lincoln or Jefferson? And I said I wanted a job desperately in Jamestown, so I said doesn't matter to me. Went to Jefferson, loved it at Jefferson, and they loved me. So while I was at Jefferson, the high school job opened up. I at first did not apply. The superintendent of schools at the time, Tim Palmer, asked if I would be considered to go down to Jamestown High School. Now here this is 1976. This would be the fall of 76 when I would first start at Jamestown High School. Well, I said, I got to do this and this and this. Two of my stipulations, because I was happy where I was, I had to have a little bit more money, which I didn't get much more. And then I said, if I don't like it for 1 year, I can come back to Jefferson. And those stipulations were granted. Went to the high school. I met with the faculty. I knew Dutch. I knew Dick Fisher. I might have known a few other faculty members at the high school. Now, I'm coming from Jefferson, a small faculty, and a high school has 100 teachers. 100. And I'm coming from, I don't know, 300 kids at Jeff. I'm coming to 1,800 at the high school. I met with the faculty and I said, I'm here. I want the best for my school. This school is good. And it's going to remain good and it's going to get better. And I said, and right now I'm leaving because I got to go to see a junior high football game. My other son was playing football at Wash. And that's it. And that's how I introduced myself to my faculty at Jamestown High School. I'm sure they had heard about what I did at Jeff, and they knew. Then I would meet with them throughout the year individually in my office, and we would get acquainted. Probably I don't know, I can go on if you don't mind. Academically, maybe the best thing that I ever did, I can say two best things, was to get Jamestown accredited by the Middle States Association of Colleges and Universities and High Schools. Never happened before. We spent 3 to 4 days bringing in teachers, administrators from various schools in the state, and sitting in on the classes of my teachers. I wanted them to make sure that it just wasn't me, it was other people setting an example. I can recall Denny Mazeros from Faulkner, their phys ed teacher. He came in to observe the phys ed department. He was one. There were probably 3 people coming in. Secondly, the students. I would try to study the yearbooks in the summertime to learn the student's name. I tried to make a big school into a small school, such as Panama and Mercer, by knowing everybody's name, knowing something about their families, being in the hallway and talking to them. And I think it paved the way. You know, kids in a big school, because they're coming down from, at the time, Washington, Lincoln, and Jefferson Junior High. They're probably scared to death, you know, to see these sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So I try to make them feel at home. I know their names, and that's the way it is. Athletically, probably the biggest thing I ever did was to get Jamestown High School into the ECIC. People before me could have done it, they didn't. The athletic director and the principal before me could have done the same thing I did. I got tired of going to Erie. Scott Kinberg got tired of going to Erie with me, watching Jamestown lose over there. And we have no business going over there and playing a schedule over in Erie, especially when our taxpayers are paying New York State dues to play in New York State. Now, granted, we could play the championship games in New York State. Niagara Falls, we usually end up playing or losing to. And so, what I all did, I made a phone call to the state ed department, directed to athletics. They said, I have a point, but I write a letter. I did that. So one phone call, one letter. Jamestown is in the ECIC. Nobody wanted us there. No. We put up with a lot, but I had the state behind me. I was lucky. They would have one thing after another. The big thing was the gymnasium was too small. What did I do? Schedule games at JCC. You can't argue with a college gymnasium, ECIC. So that's where we played our home games, JCC, until the new gymnasium was built. Mm-hmm. That's the history behind that. And yeah, we took a lot of grief from the ECIC people. They didn't want us, but we had the state in our favor.
And the reason being was it distance.
I think that's another thing. I do think that's another thing. But since we've been there, I don't think we've ever had a losing season. I don't think so. Scott would maybe one a losing season. That's pretty good, you know. And even in football, we get an opening in football. What do I don't go looking. I know Wally Hucknall. I bring Wally Hucknall down. Oh yeah, I know what he did at Lincoln. And I knew what he could do at Jamestown High School. He did. He was very successful. Mm-hmm. So, we all know we trust our instincts to a long point. I brought in Randy Anderson to teach soccer, to do soccer. He wasn't going to do it. He hadn't played soccer. I said, I need a little help, Randy. He helped me out. He said, I'll stay for 1 year. I think he said something like that. He ended up staying for 17. Yep, there you go. So those are little things that
we all understand. You can't shake them off.
That's right. But it was good time. I love Jamestown High School. Yep. Never, I don't know, I would welcome the police. I never had a policeman in the school, only if they came after somebody, only. We did it. When I say we, my two assistants and myself, we ran the school. We did the discipline. If there's a fight breaks out, we're in the middle of it. We break it up. Oh yeah. Before I got there, they used to have what they call food fights and so forth. I said, you'll never have one when I'm here. We never did. Never. They had a skip day before I got there. First year I was here, they had a skip day. I went after them myself. Yep. And all the people that skipped stayed. I had 3 rooms full of detention for 8 nights. They missed a period. Every night they had to stay. That was it. I never had another one. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could get away with things then that I can't now. But it's just that's how much I love the place. Well, there's 3 people that went to Jamestown High School, and you loved it too.
One of the great tributes is the fact that ECIC, you played at JCC, then you got a new gymnasium, and then they actually gave a name to it. Were you surprised when they did that?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a moment like that?
Yeah, they did it at my final graduation at Chautauqua Institution. They made a presentation. The senior class president had gone to the board and asked if the board would not consider naming the gymnasium after me. I did not know this. And that's how it happened. And it was an honor. And the next day, I had gone down to the gymnasium to look at the gym, and they had already started painting the gym with my name on it and so forth. And it was a thrill. And have something like that dedicated to you meant a lot to me. So, yeah, it was big time. Yep, big time.
Speaking of big time, our paths crossed with you and your wife, Marianne. We'd be remiss if we didn't pause and Marianne as part of your career, which ultimately led to supporting you and all the things. Can you reflect a little bit on her?
Yes, I will. Excuse me, I'm very sorry for breaking up a little bit, but Marianne was the coach's daughter in Mercer, Pennsylvania. The basketball coach's daughter. Yep. And I'm the basketball player. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I was at Grove City College, a junior actually, at Grove City. Marianne was in nursing school at Pitt at the time. And it was in that summer that I started dating Marianne. She was at Pitt, and I was at Grove City. And we dated for those 2 years. And then she was wrapping up her final year. Now, at Pitt at the time, they did not allow any students to be married. Now, they may get challenged in today's society on that. At the time, no students were allowed to get married, but Marianne and I got married. Mm-hmm. But Marianne then left nursing with, I don't know, maybe 3 months to go, 4 months to go. And I used to say to her, I really don't think you wanted to be a nurse. So I don't think she did. So then we moved to Panama, and we started having a family, and we had 4 children. And Karen's one; she's here in attendance. And Jim is the oldest, and Michael, and then Amy. But yeah, she had a big influence, and I can remember Marianne saying to me, that summer I got the job at Casadega Valley, I said to her, gosh, I don't want, maybe I shouldn't give up tenure at Jamestown High School, or Jamestown, Washington, and not go there. And she looked at me and she said, if you don't go, don't ever ask me about administration again. That was it. Out the door I went, and the rest is history. With Casadega and Marianne. And then Marianne had a life of her own. She was a wonderful, wonderful counselor, a grief counselor, marriage counselor, divorce counselor. She was good. She was excellent. And she finished her undergraduate at Fredonia, then finished her master's degree at Bonaventure, St. Bonaventure. Yes. So anyway, she had a huge role in my life,
And most recently, they dedicated a bench up at the class of JHS class of 1980, and on the bench. So the Reflections bench in memory of Marianne McElrath, who uplifted an entire community.
Yep. I was at the dedication. They had one for her and one for me. And I was at that dedication from the class of 80. And originally, Greg, when they dedicated the building, the gymnasium, they had dedicated another bench at Strider Field in Marianne's honor. And it was steel bench, and that over time it kind of rusted, and so the class of '80 decided to help, and they dedicated another bench to her and to me. And John Panabianco, who was a department head at the time and now is on the school board at Jamestown, he helped to do that, to make sure that the class of '80 would do that. And they did, and it was very nice. So we were all there. Karen was there, I was there, my other two, Jim wasn't, but the rest of them were. Yeah, that's the benches, and they're still there. And they should be there for quite a while. Yeah, well, the impact of the basketball championships at Panama to get into the games. Now, Panama had built a new gym out there, and they had to get there before the halftime of the JV game. Yes, they did, to get in. And this is a new gym. Yes. And that's how seriously they took their sports. And interestingly enough, I just never had a complaint about how I practiced and how I taught their kids and so forth. Never would I use a foul word. Never. Nope. And they were. I was a teacher, and they were the students. Go ahead. Well, I dealt with it. I knew Susie Parker. Susie, her husband, Clark, was a teacher at Southwestern. And the girls were wanting to play some basketball. I dealt with it. I let them we had a divider in the gymnasium. They had on Wednesdays, because we played ball on Tuesdays. Wednesday was kind of an off day a little bit for my boys' basketball. On Wednesdays, they could have half the gym. Now, that was me. I never had a problem with the superintendent or anybody. Yep. But they could have half the gym. Interestingly enough, I was telling Randy, maybe you, I had taught Kay Gould, and Kay, I'm very proud of Kay. Kay, I could tell even when I taught her in 8th grade math. And even when she was in 8th grade, I could tell she was going to be a good athlete. Very good. And she would take advantage of that and so forth. So they would have half the gymnasium, and I would have half. I was down. I knew he was going to be there while he was there, and I went down in that area because I knew where the locker room was, and I knew they wouldn't be too offended because Dutch Leonard was down there, and he would make sure that I would be okay if I went down there. And outside, Dean Smith would not go inside the locker room. No. I thought that was wonderful. He stood outside the door. Jim, my son Jim, and I were there, and I struck up a nice conversation with Dean Smith, telling him, how I was a basketball coach, and I used to be, and I said how thrilled I am to meet him, and how great of a coach he is. And this was little Jamestown. And I later found out that in order to get Don Johnson, who some say is the greatest player that ever came out of Jamestown High School, I don't know. I saw him play, and he was good, excellent. Don Johnson went to North Carolina, and that's who Dean was after. Dean came to the banquet, spoke at the banquet for the Jamestown High School basketball team. How about that? That was big time for me, and I'm the coach. Uh-oh. He's not sure if it got lost or I threw it away. That's it. That's what he's trying to tell you. Well, if I did throw it away, that's a terrible mistake, because I kind of idolized Dean Smith. Being in the basketball realm, you have to marvel at the guy the players he put out, the coaches that he put out, and to have a building named after him, you know, I mean, the Dean Dome, the man was a wonderful coach.
Like having the Mac named after.
Yep. Yeah. That's an honor. That's quite an honor to have the Mac. Yep, and that's when Scott puts that in the paper that way. It's kind of nice. It's humbling to me and very nice. And I noticed that Scott always mentions it in his articles. He does. Scott, he does, and I appreciate it. Scott went with me and my wife, and we were the only Jamestown people in the stands. That was it. You know, he'll tell you. And Scott lived, I don't know, 5 doors down from me on Halleck Street at the time, something like that.
I think you were on Spruce.
Was I? All right,
off.
maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. All right, I was on Spruce. But how old would you have been then? 10?
I've been like 7th, 8th grade.
All right. That probably got Scott interested, really
Oh,
interested
absolutely.
in the writing for the sports. And we go to Erie. And afterwards, we'd stop at Howard Johnson's in Erie. And
It was the only place on Beach Street back then.
yeah, back then. And sometimes that's where I had to bribe my youngest daughter in order to go. She'd get ice cream afterwards and so forth. But yeah, and I can recall watching those games in Erie, PA. And that's another thing that influenced my going after Jamestown to get into the ECIC because of those. We're not going over there and playing Erie. We'll play them once in a while, maybe, but now even Ben Drake, you know, does it. And that's another thing I can speak to. When Ben was going after the jobs here, obviously there was an opening to be had, and there was a numerous amount of candidates for the job. And I had retired by that time, and but I knew the principal, and I called Ben Gustafson, I think it was, and I said, Ben, I need a favor. All I need you to do is to interview Ben Drake. That's all. And I said, I think you'll like the guy. So he did. He interviewed Ben, and he called me back, Ben Gustafson. Said, I don't want to let the guy go. He's that good. And that's how Ben Drake, you know, Ben Gustafson hired him. He was a principal. He was only here 2 years, I think, something like that. But that's how he got out. And Ben and I, when Ben retired, came down to my house and we had a cup of coffee and we reflected on our various careers and how proud I was of him. I had Ben, I think he graduated in '84, and then he went to Brockport. And I was so proud of him, you know, for the job he did as a coach here. Marvelous job. And then I reflected, and he said that I was way ahead of my time with the things that I did at Panama, such as I talked my superintendent into getting a huge music sound system for my practices, for my players. Nobody could use it but us. That's it. No, the gym classes, And it makes, we all know music makes our work go so much faster. And practices would go so fast. And the things that, you know, we reminisced about, Ben and I, the things we did. And he did it, you know. So those are things, little things that mean a lot to me. I always wanted nothing but the best for Jamestown High School. Nothing but the best. And I would hate it when, hate's a bad word. I would just fume when people would downgrade or talk against Jamestown High School. It just irritated me so much. But that's me. That's one person who loved the place. And, you know, and there we are, along with you, along with Greg Peterson. And then there's 2 other inductees to the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame. So I'm in good company, Greg, with Randy and Scott and you. And I thank you very, very much. I'm humbled, really. A guy that's 88 years old, still working. I was 18 years I was there. I would never miss a dance. Never missed a dance. Never. Never missed a home basketball game. Never missed a home football game. Got to a lot of wrestling matches and swim meets and track meets. Discipline is the key, whether it be the high school or any school or basketball or football. Discipline is the key, and that's it. The Browns. I'm trying to remember which one it was, but they came to me and said, can you let us score some easy baskets? We're supposed to win the game. So I let it go ahead and let that happen. But yes, you're right. It was the competitiveness. I didn't want that to happen. But I did. I came out of retirement and coached the Jamestown JVs for 10 games when Beer Lindquist was in the hospital. He was the JV coach. And we didn't lose again. 10 games. And I had players such as Dr. James Campion, Dr. Matt Raddick, Chucky Faison, McIntyre. These were sophomores at the time. And came out of retirement and coached them to 10 victories. 10 in a row. Yep. They were good. So, and I loved every minute of it. And then they used to have me coach the All-Stars. Lawrence Smith from Panama. He would have. I coached him for 3 years. Never lost again. I had some good teams. I had, very, very good. I had the Secchi kid, Chris Secchi from. Got to get him in. We got to get him in the Hall of Fame. He might be the only athlete that's won so many championships, football and basketball. He's very good. He is. Yeah. But anyway. Thank you very much for the questions. Anything else, Greg?
I just marvel at the whole thing here.
Well, I marvel. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah.
Believe me, I'm honored to be here because I know these people. I know all of you. And it's just, you're taking your valuable time. I've got time. I'm retired. I've been retired 30 years this June. 30 years this June.
Thank God you can play cards down in Lutheran.
Now, see, you know all that about me. I'm a bridge player. I think that keeps my mind sharp. I remember every card that's played. I do.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Doug.
Thank you.